Hey everyone, this is Heather with the Potomac Bead Company. Today I'm going to show you a different variation of our scalloped herringbone. For this variation, I'm actually adding on 2 more rows. So instead of it being a 4-row scalloped herringbone, I'm going to be making a 6-row herringbone. The first tutorial that we've created was a 4-row herringbone. It's very simple. This tutorial is going to show you how to have 2 bridges in between 3 different herringbone sets, making it a 6-row bracelet. The beads that I'll be using today is going to be approximately 14 grams of sky blue Ceylon in an 8/0 size, and then 14 grams of an 8/0 in a dyed rose bronze. And I'm also going to be using some delicas for my bridge, and that's size 11/0, and this is going to be a mix delica. And then for part of my bridge, I'm using some 6mm magic color, and you can use whatever round you want, 4mm, 6mm, 8mm, whichever one. You just have to be cautious of how many delicas you use or how many 11/0s you use for your bridge. These are our new magic colors that we just got in. Check glass magic colors, and this I think is in the purple color that I'll be using. So you'll also need some wildfire line thread in a 0.008 inch and cut off about 4 feet of that, and then you'll need a size 10 or 12 beading needle. And once you've got your needle on and you've strung on a stop bead, then you're ready to start your project. Okay, so I've strung on my stop bead, and I've left a couple inches of a tail. And what I'm going to start doing is my ladder stitch. I'm going to do a ladder stitch of 6 rows, and I'm going to use my brown. So I'm picking up, with my needle, I'm picking up 4 of my 8/0s, and I'm taking it down to the end of my stop bead. And at this point, I'm actually going to take my needle up the first 2 8/0s, if I can hold it in place. And I'm going to pull. And what that does is it just brings the 8/0s next to each other, kind of like a ladder. Then I'm going to take my needle down the next 2, the 2 that I just put on my project. I'm going to take it down so that it kind of pulls it into place. Going to pick up 2 more of my browns and then take my needle down those same 2 8/0s because I want them to sit next to each other, just like that. I'm going to take my needle back up those 2 that I just added because I want them to sit nicely into that ladder stitch, just like that. Then pick up 2 more, take my needle up those 2 seed beads, and then pull. Then take my needle down those 2 seed beads. You're going to pick up 2 more of your 8/0s and then take your needle down those 2 seed beads. Oops. Pulling. And then I'm going to take my needle up those 2 seed beads I just put on. And now we only have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 rows. So I'm going to add 1 more to make it 6. So put on 2 8/0s onto your needle, take your needle up that last row, pull, and then take your needle back down. Now we're in a position where we want our thread coming out of this, the top 8/0. In order to do that, you're going to take your needle up only the first seed bead. Move your needle over to the left and then take it up just 1 of your 8/0s. And then move your needle over to the right and take it up that last 8/0 on the end there. And now we're right where we want to be. And this is where we're going to start our herringbone. I'm going to pick up a blue and a brown, a brown and a blue, and then take my needle down just 1. Move over to the left and then take your needle down just one of the seed beads. And it's going to give it that V shape. Now herringbone works in couples, so you have to work in an even number. And then you're going to take your needle up through the next seed bead over, and I'm going to pick up 2 blues, and then I'm going to take my needle down through the next seed bead over, just the one. I'm going to move my needle over 1 to the left, and then take my needle up that seed bead, and I'm going to pick up a blue and a brown, and then I'm going to take my needle down that last 8-0 seed bead for that row. We've just completed our first row of herringbone. Now I want my thread up coming out of this, and in order to do that, I can either do what I did before down here, which is take my needle up through the seed bead to the right and then slide it over, or I can add a fringe, and I'm going to do that using a DELICA. And then I'm picking up a DELICA 11-0, and I'm going to take my needle up through that 8-0 seed bead. You can use anything for a fringe. You can use magatamas, you can use drops, you can use cubes, you can use another 8-0. At this point I'm going to continue my herringbone. I'm picking up a brown and a blue, and I'm taking my needle down the blue to give it that herringbone. And now we're in position to where I want to start my bridge. To start my bridge, I'm only picking up 1 11-0, and I'm going to take my needle up through that blue, the first herringbone stitch in the next set, pick up 2 blues, and then take my needle down that second herringbone stitch. And now I'm going to bridge. Pick up a DELICA and then take my needle up through that 8-0 seed bead. Oops. And it just kind of lays right in between. At this point I'm going to pick up a blue and a brown and then take my needle down the last brown of my last herringbone set. Now I'm ready to add my fringe. Pick up an 11-0 DELICA and then take my needle up through the 8-0 seed bead. I'm going to continue my herringbone by adding a brown and a blue 8-0 seed bead, and then take my needle down the blue 8-0. And now I'm going to bridge. Now we are increasing our bridge stitches. So I've added 1. Now I'm going to add 2 DELICAs. So I'm picking up 2 of my 11-0 DELICAs onto my needle, and I'm taking my needle up through the first herringbone bead of the second set. And I'm going to pull, and it just kind of lays flat, nice and flat. The DELICAs lay right in between the herringbone stitch. I'm going to pick up 2 blues, 8-0 blues, and take my needle down the second 8-0. Now I'm ready to bridge, bridging my 2 herringbone sets. Pick up 2 DELICAs and take my needle up through the first herringbone bead of my last set. And it just sits nicely. Then I'm going to pick up a blue and a brown, and I'm going to take it down, take my needle down that last brown. And now you're ready to add your fringe, and what you're going to do is continue increasing your bridges until you get about 6 DELICAs. And the reason why I picked 6 is because the size of my magic color bead, my check magic color bead, is a 6mm. And what I did was I pretty much laid my DELICAs out. I put them on a needle, and I wanted to see how many DELICAs, it would match up to. And I think we would be okay with either 5 or 6. So I'm going to do 6 because I don't want it too taut to where it's going to, I don't want the bracelet too taut to where it's going to buckle. And so I figured if we did 6 delicas for the bridges, then we'll add the magic color 6mm bead. So continue the pattern that I've just taught you until you have 6 delicas in between each herringbone stitch. Okay, so now that you've gotten to you've completed the pattern where you have 6 delicas in between each of your herringbones, we're ready to add our magic color check glass bead to our project. So what I did was I went ahead and added my fringe, and then I added my herringbone. And now my thread is coming out so that I'm ready to add what could, I would be adding delicas. Instead, now that I've met my 6 delicas, I'm going to add my 6mm bead to the project. And it's just going to sit pretty nicely, just like that, in between my herringbone. And as you can see, the project is already coming to a V. That's because we're increasing our bridges. Now, once we've added our magic, our 6mm magic color, we're going to start decreasing our delicas, and then pretty soon it's going to come, your scalloped herringbone is going to do just that. It's going to start scalloping inwards. So now that I've added my 6mm bead, I'm going to take my needle up through the 8/0 blue bead. I'm going to pick up 2 blues, 8/0 blues, and I'm going to take my needle down the second blue. I'm going to pick up a 6mm check glass bead, magic bead, and take my needle up through the blue 6mm. 8/0. I'm going to pick up a blue 8/0 and a brown 8/0 and then take my needle down that brown. I'm going to add my fringe by picking up my delica and taking my needle up through the brown 8/0. Going to pick up a brown and a blue. Going to take my needle down through the blue 8/0. And at this point, I'm going to take my needle through that magic color, the magic check bead, and then I'm going to take my needle up through the 8/0 blue seed bead. Now I'm ready to add 2 blue 8/0s. I'm taking my needle down through the second blue 8/0. I'm going to take my needle through the 6mm. Oops. And then my needle up through the blue 8/0. I'm going to pick up a blue 8/0 and a brown 8/0 and then take my needle down my brown 8/0 to finish up my herringbone stitch. Now, as you can see, we've finished adding our magic color, our 6mm. I'm going to add my fringe, and then I'm going to take my needle up through that 8/0 seed bead to get into position to start our herringbone. So I'm going to pick up a brown and a blue and take my needle down that blue 8/0. Oops. And here we're going to start decreasing. And to do that, I'm going to add 6 delicas. And then I'm going to take my needle up through that blue 8/0 seed bead of my herringbone stitch. And now I'm going to add my herringbone stitch by picking up 2 8/0s, and I'm going to take my needle down that 8/0. I'm going to pull. And now I'm going to start decreasing by picking up 6 delicas and taking my needle up through that 8-0. I'm going to pick up 2 8-0s, my blue and my brown, keeping up with my pattern, taking my needle down that last 8-0 bead on that column. And now I'm going to add my fringe, which is my DELICA, and take it up through that 8-0. And I'm going to do a herringbone by adding a brown and a blue 8-0 and taking it down, taking my needle down that second herringbone stitch. And now, since we're still decreasing, I added 6 delicas. Now I'm ready to add 5. And then you're going to continue this pattern by decreasing. And then when you get to 1, you'll do 1 row of just plain herringbone. And then the next row, you're going to start adding your 1 delica and then increasing your bridge. So this is the pattern for the rest of the bracelet. And then I'm going to show you how to tie off your bracelet once we're finished. I've completed the length of my bracelet, and now I'm at the point where I've finished 1 row, my last row of herringbone, and I'm going to do 2 rows of my ladder stitch so that I can prepare for my toggle and clasp. At this point, I'm going to use my brown 8-0s to finish up the project. So I'm going to pick up 2 of my browns and drop them down. Take my needle up the blue. You're pretty much stitching it in a herringbone way. And then when you get to your second row of your browns, you're going to connect it so that it will appear to be a ladder stitch. And I'm not going to add my fringe here. What I'm going to do is take my needle up through my blue and then diagonally to the left of my brown. And now I'm going to add 2 browns and take it down and take my needle up the brown, add 2 more browns, and take that down, and then take my needle up the last set of herringbone and add 2 more browns. And then I'm going to do the same thing I did before, take my needle up to the right, the brown to the right, and then kind of shimmy over to the left, and then shimmy over to the right, my last brown. And this is where I'm just going to kind of stitch down the 2 browns, stitch over my 2 8-0s, and then I'm going to take my needle back to the right just to reinforce it some. Take my needle back up and take my needle, just kind of reinforcing so it looks more like a ladder instead of a herringbone. And one more time. And there you go. And that is how you finish your scalloped herringbone project. And at this point, you are going to prepare yourself to add your toggle and clasp. What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to be using my 6mm check glass bead. So I'm actually going to use it on the other side. But what you'll do is you'll probably, for this portion here, I'm going to do my circle. I'm going to create my loop or my clasp, and I'm just going to probably pick up 20 to 25 delicas, whichever matches or whichever will fit your 6mm bead. And if you're not going to be using seed beads or your 6mm magic bead, then you can use any type of toggle or clasp, and pretty much do it the same way that I'm doing. Instead of adding so many seed beads, you would just add a couple seed beads and then your toggle. It would just be a little bit easier. But I always like to finish my seed bead projects with a seed bead toggle and clasp. I just think it's par for the course. So, and then what I'm going to do is just kind of bring it back down here, down my seed bead, my ladder stitch rows that I created, just to create a loop. There are different ways to create a loop. I can, have it come out from the sides here, and then what I'm going to do to the other side is take my stop bead off, and I'm just going to reinforce my ladder stitch again with the remaining portion of my thread, and I'm going to add on my magic bead. And what I'd probably do is add on a couple of my 11-0s, my magic bead, and then an 11-0, and then take my needle back through. And then you can tie off your string, and there you've got your advanced version of your scalloped herringbone project. And I hope you had fun making this project. I'd love to see pictures, and I'd love to see everybody's colors, and they're very pretty and dainty looking. So thanks for watching this video. Check us out on our other YouTube videos, and also on Facebook and Twitter. And one day we'll see you in the bead store, or have fun shopping on our website. So again, thanks again for watching.